Next witness, Mr. Wood.
The state calls Ron Ball.
Detective Ball, if you'll stand here in front of the plexiglass at the witness stand and raise your right arm, face the clerk.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this cause now pending shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Detective Ball, we'll have you sit right here at the witness stand. Once you've been seated, you can remove your mask. Detective Ball, if you'll pull that microphone up and aim it up towards your chin.
This one?
Yep.
Okay.
Pull it down just a little bit. There you go. Mr. Woods, you may inquire when you're ready.
Thank you. Will you please state your name and spell it for the record?
My name is Ron Ball, B-A-L-L.
Where are you currently employed?
I'm currently employed at the Rexburg Police Department.
How long have you been employed there?
I've been employed there for a little over 28 years.
What is your current title?
My current title is I'm the lieutenant over investigations.
Okay. Have you completed the post academy?
I have. I hold a basic, intermediate, advanced, and a management certificate. Also, I am a graduate from the FBI National Academy 2015.
Okay. Detective, for your work at the Rexburg Police Department, were you involved in the investigation of the disappearance of J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan?
Yes.
Detective, were you present at Chad Daybell's residence on June 9th of 2019?
I was.
Okay, what were you there for?
We were there to conduct a search warrant at that residence.
Okay. Are you aware what, if anything, was discovered on his property?
I am.
What was it?
The remains of 2 bodies.
Okay. Do you know if those remains were sent to the Ada County Coroner's Office?
Yes.
How do you know that?
I was personally involved in taking them to Ada County.
Okay.
Yeah, Ada County Coroner's Office.
Okay. What day did you take those to the coroner's office?
We took the remains to the coroner's office on June 10th
Of what year?
of this year.
Okay, so 2020?
Yep.
Did you continue to work on this case on June 12th of
Correct.
2020? What did you do that day?
On that particular day, myself, Detective Ray Hermosillo, Detective Kakimanu from the Fremont County Sheriff's Office, and Fremont County Coroner Brenda Dye went back to the Ada County Coroner's Office, where we received and took in evidence that was the state lab had, or the coroner's office had retrieved from the bodies.
Okay. Were you involved in actually loading said evidence into the coroner's truck that day?
Yes,
Were you able to personally observe the evidence and or the packaging it was in?
yes.
Do you know who was in the coroner's truck?
The driver of the vehicle, of the coroner's truck, was Detective Kakimanu with Fremont County Sheriff's Office, and then Fremont County Coroner Brenda Dye was a passenger in the vehicle.
Okay. And where were you during the transportation of the evidence?
Myself and Detective Hermosillo were in another vehicle, traveling with them.
And did you ever lose sight of the coroner's truck?
No,
Did the coroner's truck ever stop prior to arriving at the state lab?
it may have stopped at some traffic lights, but that would have been the only stops.
Okay. Once you arrived at the state lab, what did you do?
Once we arrived at the state lab, we met with somebody outside, a representative from the state lab. We then took the property out of the back of the vehicle and then walked it inside the Idaho State Forensic Laboratory.
Okay. So were you personally involved in moving the property from the coroner's truck to the state lab?
Yes,
Were you able then to view the evidence and or the packaging it was in?
I did.
Was it in the same condition it was in when you loaded it into the coroner's truck from the Ada County Coroner's Office?
Yes.
Do you know generally the evidence you were involved in transporting?
It was quite a bit of biological evidence. There was some garbage bags. There was some duct tape. Quite a bit of it was biological samplings.
And when you say biological evidence, what do you mean by that?
Swabs. There were fingernail clippings, fingernail swabs, and those type of things.
Okay.
Excuse me? Okay.
Once the evidence was taken into the state lab, what, if anything, did you do?
Once the evidence was placed in the state lab, or taken inside the state lab, I then went to a location with one of the property management people there. That evidence hadn't been checked into the Rexburg Police Department yet because I had just received it and we were still in Boise. So I had to sit down. I had to get my office on the phone. I talked to Sergeant Colette Davison with the Rexburg Police Department. I went piece by piece of it and described to her what that piece was, and she then entered it into the computer system back home, or back in Rexburg, and it was assigned a number. And then once I had that number, I then gave that to the representative from the Idaho Forensic Laboratory, and they then took custody of it.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd ask that the witness be handed State's Exhibit 11.
You've marked that, Mr. Wood?
I have.
Judge, could we approach for a minute?
You may. We're going to go back in chambers, though. I think because the plexiglass, it requires the attorneys to speak so loudly that it's really hard to keep it silent. So we can go back in chambers, which is fine. We'll be back on the record in State versus Daybell. The court took a brief recess to have a sidebar with counsel for the state and the defense. The issue has been resolved. It's my understanding. Mr. Wood, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd ask that State's Exhibit 11 be handed to the witness.
Exhibit 11 will be handed to the witness. Mr. Pryor, you've had a chance to review that now. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Any objection to the admission of Exhibit 11?
Did he move for admission?
He did not.
I have not moved yet.
All right.
I think I have to establish a couple things, Your Honor.
That's fine.
Detective, do you have State's Exhibit 11 in your hand?
Yes.
Have you seen that document before?
I have.
And are you familiar with that document?
I am.
Can you look on page 2 and tell me if that document is signed under penalty of perjury?
It is.
And who does that document, what organization does that document purport to be from?
This document is from the Idaho State Police Forensic Services.
Your Honor, I'd move to admit State's Exhibit 11 into evidence for purposes of identity.
For purposes of identity, Judge, there's no objection.
It will be admitted for purposes of identity.
Your Honor, I'd ask that the defendant be handed what's been marked as State's Exhibit 12.
Mr. Lee, did you say the time?
Witness. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Exhibit 12 will be handed to the witness.
Thank you. Detective, do you have Exhibit 5 in front of you? Or I apologize, Exhibit 12 in front of you?
I do.
Do you recognize that document?
Yes.
Have you had a chance to review it?
Yes.
What organization does that document purport to be from?
This is from the Idaho State Police Forensic Services.
Can you look on page 2 of that document and tell me if it is signed under penalty of perjury?
It is.
Your Honor, the state would move for State's Exhibit 12 to be entered into evidence pursuant to Rule 5.1 for
Mr. Pryor?
purposes of identity.
For identification purposes, Judge, there's no objection.
For identification purposes, it will be admitted. Exhibit 12.
Your Honor, the state would ask that State's Exhibit 13 be shown to the defense, then handed to the witness.
Exhibit 13 will be handed to the defense counsel. Exhibit 12 is being handed to the witness. Excuse me, Exhibit 13.
Detective, do you have State's Exhibit 13 in front of you?
I do.
Do you recognize that document?
Yes.
Have you seen it before?
Yes.
Who does that document purport to be from?
It is from the Idaho State Police Forensic Services.
And can you look on page 2 of that document and tell me if it's signed under penalty of perjury?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, the state moves that State's Exhibit 13 be entered into evidence pursuant to Rule 5.1 for purposes of identity.
No objection, Judge.
Exhibit 13 will be admitted for purposes of identity.
Thank you. The state has no further questions for Detective Paul.
Cross-examination, Mr.
Judge.
Pryor.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you very much. Lieutenant Ball, the items that are referenced in the reports, the swabs and all of that, initially were those, thank you, were those items obtained by you? Did you do the swabs, or was that someone else?
That was somebody else.
And those folks provided you with the property, is that correct?
Correct.
And can you just briefly describe how you were provided that property? Was it on site at Mr. Daybell's house, or where?
Well, I guess I'm not sure which part you're talking about. Was
Well, let's
it
talk
at the
about-
lab or at the house?
The swabs that were obtained,
Okay.
okay? Those were done where?
They were done at the Ada County Coroner's Office.
Okay. Now, the other evidence that you made reference to, that you transported to the I believe the lab or to coroners to be with the folks from Fremont County. Prior to that being transported, whose care and custody were those items in?
Be the county coroner.
Okay. So at some point there was a transport originally from where the items were obtained to the county coroner. Were you part and parcel of that transport?
I did not transport those items personally. That was transported by Fremont County Coroner Brenda Dye and Detective Vince Kaikamanu.
The last name again?
Kaikamanu?
Mr. Wood, do you mind spelling Kaikamanu for the record so that we can all have that clear for right now? Does anybody know the spelling of that?
I can guess, but I don't know that I can spell it correctly.
It's Kaaiakamamu.
Thank you.
May I proceed, Judge?
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. So at some point from the site, we're going to call him Detective K,
Okay.
and the coroner obtained the items from the site and took them to the coroner's office. And at some point you went from the coroner's office to the,
Correct.
okay. And at all times from the initial obtaining those items, on what day did you obtain those items?
We would have obtained them items on the 12th of June.
And then on the 12th, you took those directly to the,
Idaho State Forensics Laboratory.
right, okay. And at no time did those items lose sight, or
No.
did you, right. No further questions, Judge. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pryor. Mr. Wood, any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, Detective Ball. You can be excused from the witness stand.